Several weeks later, my mother had collapsed. The tea my mother drank was discovered to contain a poisonous mana-infused substance called Process 1. However, luckily due to her weak body, her body rejected the mana before her body had taken a lethal amount. She managed to secure her life, at least for the time being. Upon being informed, the peacekeepers conducted a formal investigation. At the same time, Rune disappeared from the residence. A few days later, it came to light that Rune had snuck into the Zevets Medica's drug stock room. She had stolen enough Process 1 to kill over 10 people. Several days after that, several top executives of companies beyond the Outer Pole with whom Zevets was to form partnerships were found dead, poisoned by Process 1. The negotiations between the Outer Pole and the Second Sector were merely cut. The plans for expansion that my father had been working on for 4 years were all scrapped. It was a huge blow to Zevets companies. The next day, a cargo ship docked at the port nearby and loaded Rune's corpse. Autopsy was conducted. The results showed a huge metal-colored mana inside her body. Her cause of death was acute mana shock. Anyone from the Outer Pole who goes beyond its borders would die from mana shock. Even Chow would know this. Hence, it was hard to believe that Rune could have tried to relieve her own intent. Eventually, it was declared a cold case. Just what was Rune trying to accomplish? Was her death an accident? It hadn't dawned me at the time, but I would realize eventually. My mother's spirit finally broke. She refused to eat anything. Several months later, she passed away due to wasting away. My father could no longer speak right and confined himself in his laboratory. The Zevets family was ruined. No, had long been ruined. The very moment that Rune was born into this world. Yes, those 6 years of peace since the Growlskis incident were all nothing but a shame. Rune's death was not an accident. It was just like trying to destroy a carefully stacked house of cards instant for her. Her suicide was a calculated move in order to deal the greatest possible blows to Vetzies. There must have been no other reason. In order to destroy, she had to destroy herself. That was Rune in a nutshell.
And you are?
We're Sarah's friends.
Friends? Unfortunately, I have to inform you that Sarah doesn't have any friends. Perhaps you've misunderstood?
Again with this. Beating around the bush isn't going to help. Let's just get straight to the point. We're travelers. When we arrived at the city and were completely clueless, Sarah was extremely hospitable and accommodating to us. We are incredibly grateful to her. However, it seems that her goodwill worked against her, as I hear she is now being punished for her actions. The leader of this Zevets organization that you work for is apparently going to take measures against her.
I had heard about that from Rudo. So, it was you that...
Please, could we speak with you, even for just a moment?
Sorry, but we have our own issues to deal with as well. Even if you've come to me with all that in mind, this isn't a matter that can be taken lightly.
Aunt Sarah, when we first met, had introduced herself to us as Rune.
What? What did you just say?
Albus's brusque expression changed in an instant. It seems that anyone deeply connected will have quite a reaction to the name Rune. Now we just need one more push. I promise you, if this matter is not of your concern, then we will not press you any further. I understand that this is incredibly presumptuous of me, but I simply want to confirm a few things. I seek to have a discussion with you.
Shall we, take this elsewhere then?
Yes! Our lodging is just on the outskirts of town. Is that alright with you?
Just the two of you?
Yes? What of it?
Don't you feel that bringing a man back to your lodging at this time of night is rather, careless?
Careless? What makes you say that? And what does being a man or a woman have to do with anything?
I suppose this can be chalked up to cultural differences. Regardless, the answer is no. If you want to talk, then let's do so in the park in the central square. At this time of day, there are still people around, and it should still be much quieter than this place. Please, go ahead. I'll leave as soon as I settle the bill.
Well, just what was with his attitude? Selphine? What's the matter?
I have a feeling that, in this place of culture, men are still predominantly in a position of power.
Huh? That can't be. Considering how much their civilization has progressed, it is rather hard to believe.
You never know. Without any craft, then a normal girl can't really beat a guy in a fight. Rosenheid was like that before too, right?
A male-centered society where brute force means everything. Just how long ago was that? Still, that does explain his initial demeanor. I can't quite tell whether the city is progressing or regressing. Is something on your mind?
No, it's just thought that it's kind of scary if that was the case.
Violent crimes, though seldom, still do occur in Rosenheid, but ones born from sexism are just about non-existent.
It's true, but even when things as simple as this have to be explained to be understood, do you think we could ever understand each other?
You do have a point. However, if you become fearful just from that, the name of Rosenheid will be tarnished. As long as there are no major obstacles between us, I'm sure we can talk and reach a mutual understanding.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
Thank you for taking the time to meet us.
By the way, who advised you to talk to me about all this?
Oh. We gave Albus a short rundown of the events till this point.
I see. So it's all hurtsy, eh? Is he doing well?
Doing well? I suppose he is. If he weren't, he couldn't possibly be able to down that much alcohol.
I see. That's just like him.
If I may presume, does this mean that it's been a while since you've last met?
Yes, it's been quite a while. Let's just say things happened. In any case, why don't we introduce ourselves properly? My name is Albus Falster. I serve as the CTO of Jevitz Enterprise.
I am Ritona, a traveler.
Name's Selphine, Ritona's fellow travel companion. It's a pleasure to finally make your acquaintance.
Excuse me, I have an unrelated question that I was hoping you could answer. It's been bothering me since yesterday. You mentioned some sort of title, but I don't quite understand what it means. Rune also mentioned something similar.
Ah, CTO? It's short for Chief Technological Officer. You can think of it as the person in charge of the technical side of things.
I see. I think...
Rune is the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer. In other words, he's at the topmost position of Jevitz Enterprise.
Whoa. That's a lot easier to understand. It seems that these titles serve as positions when introducing oneself.
Chief Executive, so basically, like the president?
Well, technically not quite, but, well, the nuance is the same.
I see.
I take it your home country doesn't have entities such as corporations? Yeah, something's going on with the connectivity, I'm not sure. Sorry.
Wait a minute. Do forgive me for commenting, but if I am not mistaken, you appear much older than Rune Jevitz. So is that how he... So how is it that he allowed to So how is it that he is allowed to wield absolute authority?
You sure are straight to the point, aren't you? Well, you have a point. Rune is a mere 22 years of age, after all.
22? Just 3 years apart from me.
Just 3 years away from Ritona.
With that expression of his?
Amazing, isn't he? He's so much younger than I am, but he's been able to keep a company like this huge running so well.
Oh, you mean the leader of a really huge organization?
That he is. In terms of sheer scale, Jevitz is the largest on the entire outer pole.
Well then, is there some kind of ceremony for those people for them to become leaders?
Ceremony?
Yes, a ceremony.
Well, it's not quite a ceremony. Unless you're referring to promotion parties.
Party?
It's a celebratory event.
Oh, well, during our travels, we've heard of this country. Whenever they choose their next ruler, using a ceremony called the Path Down, They inherit all their predecessors' memories, experiences, and knowledge. It's a kind of culture wherein the descendants, the next generation, will be able to gain the qualifications they need to be the next ruler. Half down that continues across many generations bolsters the country's strength and also shows a strong unity with the citizens.
Is that true?
For someone so young to inherit such a large kingdom, well, company in this case, he has to be qualified to be. So, you need a ceremony like that, right?
By inheriting knowledge, can I take that to mean that they are educated and groomed by their predecessors?
Educated. Well, that is a part of it. But it's not something as indirect. The experiences and knowledge are directly transmitted.
Albus tilts his head.
Directly transmitted? Not via speaking, writing, or teaching, eh? There's no such thing then. Us folk in the outer pole have to use words, speech, more concrete forms of communication to convey what we're thinking and feeling. There's no other way for us to do so. It's impossible for us to directly transmit knowledge, as you say. So I suppose that in the outer pole's culture, there's no such ceremony to install leaders as you mentioned. Why do you ask?
Well, it's because...
We're wandering around different countries, traveling to learn and study more about the world, you see. By experiencing all sorts of cultures, we'd like to expand our knowledge on the vastness of this world.
That sounds like quite the undertaking, especially considering the world's state of affairs lately. I envy you both. If I weren't from the outer pole, I would have loved to travel the world as well. Oh, but I digress. Let's get back to the heart of the matter. For confirmation's sake, you said that Sarah introduced herself as Rune, correct?
You about Rune, didn't you, Albus?
Did I know her? We were like family up until she died. Rune and Rudo's father, Sid, we had been very good friends. Sid and I built Zevith's enterprise from the ground up.
Impressive. He's quite the influential individual. Hertzwan sure knows all sorts of people.
What again? Does that mean Sid is?
He passed away about 3 years ago.
But Rudo was still 22 years old. He must still have been awfully young.
There's quite a long story behind that.
Well, please tell us about the relationship between Rune and Sarah. Are they one and the same?
Yes, we're completely in the dark about what's going on. Please, tell us more about Sarah. Just who is she? Is that her real name?
Her real name, eh? That name is a term we use in order to pertain to Sarah. As for whether it qualifies as a name, well, I suppose that depends on your definition of what a name is.
Judging by how you're referring to her, should we take that to mean that she's really is being treated as a slave?
Excuse me?
We are merely travelers and don't know the customs of this land. However, from where we come from, treating people like belongings is something that should not ever be tolerated. So right now, we can't even hide our astonishment regarding the state of affairs.
I see. You two were born and raised in a very good country. But just to clear up any misunderstandings, I have to inform you that she is no slave. It was just a few decades ago that slavery was outlawed in this country. Although there are still some wretched folks out there who still practice it in absolute secrecy.
Then that makes even less sense. Why do you refer to her as if she were an object?
Precisely because she is an object. You asked about her name earlier, yes? The word Sarah is a term we use to refer to her. It means Synapse Architect Review and Assessment. We took the first letters of each word from the title of the report written up when she was first constructed. That's why it technically isn't a name. It's an acronym.
What? Constructed? That doesn't make sense.
Sarah was...
Did that not go through?
Sarah was... made?
Sarah is a product of Zevitz Enterprises' last president, Sid Zevitz, created to handle mana-related tasks in the Outer Pole. Sarah is a machine.
You must be joking.
A machine?
Although our company, Zevitz Enterprise, is well known for mana to energy conversion and energy supply services.
Wait just a minute here. A machine? By machine, do you mean something like a clock?
Well, it's certainly on a completely different dimension of complexity, but yes, in a sense, I suppose I do.
With all due respect, I just cannot believe that.
Well, I suppose most people wouldn't.
Machines do not possess sentience, do they?
Hmm?
Whoever was with us yesterday was clearly sentient and had a strong sense of self. She was aware of her surroundings, knew right from wrong, exercised judgment, and was able to display compassion for others.
Intriguing. Would you happen to be acquainted with philosophy?
Not really. I wouldn't say I'm on that level of familiarity.
When asked on the difference between what is and isn't human, being able to go straight to questions about its perception ability is proof that one has been thoroughly educated in these matters. Your homeland truly must be rich in a variety of aspects. I'm envious.
Wait just a moment. In regards to your assertion that Sarah is a machine, all I can see is an excuse for you to treat her as you do now.
I'm answering your questions fully aware that you most likely would be in disbelief. You are free to believe me or otherwise. In fact, if I were in your place, I probably wouldn't believe it myself.
Realistically speaking, there's no way to verify your...
Coda, don't speak, okay? In any case, both at a dead end anyway. This way, we can see if he's telling the truth or not, okay?
So she does mean to use that then. Very well.
The younger looking girl seems to hold the power in the relationship. Quite intriguing.
Regardless, we still find it difficult to swallow your claim that Rune is indeed a machine.
Perfectly sensible. To be honest, much of it remains a mystery to myself as well.
Albus?
Yes?
If you don't mind, I'd like to show you a kind of craft, if you so please.
Mana craft, you say? Are you two mana crafters?
Yes, we are monocrafters who come from a country far away from here.
You said you were travelers, but to think you were from the inner pole. Are you sure about this? Consider where you are right now. What about mana shock?
According to Rudo, we had 3 or 4 days remaining. We are shouldering that risk by voluntarily being here.
I see. I think I now have a grasp on how gravely you two view this matter. Seeing as you're willing to divulge all this, should I take it to mean that you're deadly serious about all this?
It wouldn't be fair to keep one-sidedly asking you for information after all.
I do appreciate the sentiment. But unfortunately, I don't have the time. I'll essentially be trapped in the office from tomorrow until next week or so, with little to no free time to spare. I still have some matters to attend to after this as well.
It keeps cutting off. Good lord. Yeah, let me turn up my sensitivity more.
That won't be an issue. This craft will be over in the blink of an eye.
As he says, this craft won't take much of your time.
Huh? I'm not quite sure I follow. What should I do exactly?
For the meantime, all we need is your trust in us. All we wish to do is exchange information with you. If there's any information or knowledge you'd like us to impart, then we can share it directly with you at the same time.
Sharing information directly?
Before we go any further, this means that you won't have any reservations talking with us, right?
Yes. Though, I do have my limits. It's just that I don't have the time to explain everything in full.
It's alright. You'll understand in a few minutes.
Will you trust us?
Okay. I trust you.
you very much. Alright, Ritona, have a little mana.
Your wish is my command.
Good grief, this sure is quite the turn of events. I can't believe I get to see Manacraft performed in the flesh. Now I'm a little anxious.
Lean further on the other side. Now,
Other side?
Selphine. Selphine had already begun converting mana. She's so concentrated on the task that she doesn't even notice my speaking anymore.
I don't naturally present mana, so my internal mana isn't stabilizing. I didn't expect conversion to need this much concentration and stamina. But how did Ritona re-hit her sword so quickly? Alright, to do it.
Selphine opens her eyes wide. It seems that she's finished preparations.
Is it just me, or are her eyes more radiant than before? The sheen of her hair, too. Even her skin seems to be radiating a weak light.
Shall we begin?
Huh? Ah, yes.
Excuse me for a moment.
Selphine pressed her right index and middle fingers together, and lightly touched Albus's temples. Are you all right? It seems to be taking longer than usual, perhaps because we're on the outer pole.
Yeah, it's been a while, so I'm a little nervous.
No need to tense up so much. This craft isn't going to be of any harm.
Phew.
Your body will warm up a little, as if you'd done some light jogging.
I see.
Now, if you please. Close.
Understood.
Whoa! What a strange sensation. I can feel my physical body, but my consciousness is sinking, like it's getting sucked into a deep darkness.
Establish the link with you, Albus. Next is Ritona.
Ritona as well.
Selphine serves as the intermediary, connecting the three of us. That allows all of us to share our consciousness.
Is that even...
What we will now conduct is referred to as a mind dive. It is a type of compcraft which is mainly used to establish links between the consciousness of one or more parties. How do you feel, Albus?
Oh my days. This all feels very strange. The sounds around us are slowly fading away, and that my consciousness is being trapped inside. Inside, there's a girl, Selphine, whose existence is growing more and more pronounced.
Just about ready to, Ritona. Deep breaths, please.
Understood.
Suddenly, now Ritona's joining my consciousness. All of this... Truly, there are no words I can use to describe this.
Let's begin.
This place is... Huh? Lab 9? How did we get in this place?
This place is called Milestone. It's a space serving as the materialized form of your subconscious.
The manifestation of my subconscious? The manifestation of my subconscious? Oh, did my thoughts just flow out without my knowing it?
We are currently in the realm of your subconscious.
My subconscious?
All the things you wish to ask us, and any information that you allow us to know, is conveyed to us purely as is. In that sense, you ought to be able to hear my own thoughts as well.
What? Her mouth isn't moving, but I can still hear her voice?
I'm sure it comes as quite a surprise to you, but I'm sure you'll quickly get used to it.
I see. How do I put it? It's as if I've wandered straight into a fairy tale.
Normally, this craft, a mind dive, is supposed to last but a moment or two. A conversation that would normally last a full hour will only take a split second.
Though sometimes, circumstances can cause it to take longer. Most of the time, when there are multiple people like this, it does take quite a bit longer. This time, since there's 3 of us, and so that it's less alienating to Albus, I've structured it as more of a conversation between us.
I'm grateful for that, I suppose. Should I? Now I'm the one who can't follow the conversation. Should I? Now I'm the one who can't follow the conversation.
I can tell you're pretty nervous about all this, so I'll try to explain it a little better. As Ritona said earlier, Milestone is a space manifested from your subconscious. In here, there's no distinction between truth and lies. The only thing here is the mana within your body and mind. It contains your pure, unadulterated memories and the unconscious mind that allows you to convey them.
Conveying my memories? Both my conscious and subconscious?
Humans do have some memories which they'd rather not let others know of. Your conscious and unconscious self has the right to choose what to show us and what not to. There are things you feel you must tell us, and things you feel that you mustn't. For these sealed off memories, even as someone like me who can freely use a mind dive cannot peek into those.
Essentially, except for the things you choose to tell or show us, the rest of it will not be conveyed to us.
I can't believe such amazing technology actually exists in this world.
The mind dive is quite a peculiar craft. Only those who can use the path down are able to utilize it. Basically, it's a craft only royalty can use. It's not something that needs to be shared, so I'm keeping these thoughts and memories closed off.
Is that so? I don't fully understand, but that means we can take our time here and discuss whatever we wish to at our own pace?
No, we don't need to go about it in such a roundabout manner.
be able to communicate via senses as well. Once you open up, the information we need to exchange, whatever you'd like to share with us, should freely flow out.
Huh? Nothing's happening.
It looks like we need a little more time. I suppose this is what it's like dealing with someone from the outer pole. The flow of internal mana is a little stagnant. It will take some time for it to react.
Why don't we relax for a little until you get used to it?
Sooner or later, you won't have to speak. Instead, our consciousnesses will just freely share information.
Alright. Still, this really is quite a strange experience. It's like I can see straight into the two of you. Your personalities, your humanity, I can perceive directly.
And we can say the same to you, Albus.
This really represents who you are as a person. The space is clean and well organized. The lighting is just right, and the entire area is stable.
It's a sign that your thoughts are coexisting amicably with ours. If the compatibility is off, then the incongruities in one's personality would either reject a mind dive entirely, or the space of the media story would be dark and warped.
I see. I appreciate the compliments, but I'm not exactly the nicest person there is. The truth is, I've had some doubts about you two, that you may be industry spies. For all I know, you might have been sent by Hyves.
We've known. Rather, we'd felt that from some time back.
But now, I see it so clearly now. Like the anxieties in my heart are being cleansed. The two of you truly simply want to talk with me. And more than that, the two of you truly are that worried about Sarah.
Oh, it's begun.
Oh, it's still him. Okay. When discussing the Zevit's siblings and Sarah, there's another vital person we must discuss. Sid Zevitz. He's the founder of Zevitz Enterprise and the father of Rudo and Rune. The Zevitz family was never an affluent one. Born the eldest son of the family, ever since he was a child, he was different from his peers. I'd been with him since I was young, and we were practically brothers. Of all the people who I'd grown up with in the slums, he was the only one who I'd remained friends with till the very end. Sid's father was reprehensible. A worthless man, an alcoholic who would become violent with his own family. Truly savage. He wouldn't lift a finger to do any honest work, instead using his shady connections for get-rich-quick schemes to smuggle large amounts of purified mana into the outer pole. When Sid was 9, that man said that he would leave to find work elsewhere and promptly disappeared from Cadia. Sid had to take care of his weak mother all by himself. At the time, the idea of using mana for energy hadn't existed in Cadia. Instead, we had to use coal or kerosene to make it through winter. The winter cold was so harsh that there were numerous casualties every year. It was where we lived, the slums, that was always hit the hardest. If only we had some kerosene. Until he lost his mother, Sid had often repeated the phrase. He and I did our damnedest, working with everything we had to keep his mother in good health. But of course, we were still only 9 years of age. Whatever we made never amounted to much. After 2 years of painful struggle, Sid's mother passed away when we were 11 years old. That year, something inside of Sid changed. He had always been prejudiced against the world, cursing it every chance he got, but that changed completely. Perhaps he came to an epiphany. Unless he changes, the world will swallow him up whole. That if he goes on like this, his life will have amounted to nothing but him crawling in the dirt. He accepted the unjustness and brutality of the world. With his mother's passing, Sid was alone and free to do whatever he wanted. Whenever he had time, he would talk about mana. At the time, it was all so completely beyond me. Sid's father, whom he so hated, was obsessed with mana. Although he had hated it, he continued to pursue it, which wasn't something one would expect. Unlike his father, however, he wasn't interested in short-term, get-rich-quick schemes. While we continued working in the coal mines, he would pilfer sediment that had trace amounts of coloured mana in them, bringing them back as research material.
Owie.
Phew! The foreman's in a pretty bad mood today, too.
I knew this was going to be some hard work, but I tell ya, being a coal mine worker ain't something a human ought to do.
Barely pays enough just to put food on the table, too.
My joints are all just screaming in pain.
Still, we ought to consider ourselves lucky to even have work. It looks like this year's winter is going to be incredibly cold as well.
Well, at least it's freaking hot while we're working. I'd rather be moving around and working than just sitting around in school all day. Way more fulfilling. Who the heck would want to waste their childhood in a dump like that? Not me, that's for sure.
You have a point there.
Oh, right. Albus, let me show you something really cool.
What? Is that?
That's right, it's sediment. There's not a lot of it, but there's definitely a little bit of colored mana inside.
Where did you even...
While we were mining, that coal mine might actually be a mana mine.
What have you done, Sid? Don't tell me you're gonna sell that. No way. That's dirty money. They'll find you and throw you in prison.
Oh, don't be stupid. Like I could sell such a valuable sample.
Sample?
Actually, this isn't the first sample I found. The first one I found was smaller than a pea. But the deeper I dug, the sediment just kept getting bigger and bigger.
You've been sneaking out sediment for that long?
Look, just listen to what I have to say first, okay? I made a pretty interesting discovery. Come by my laboratory later.
Laboratory? You mean your house, right?
Oh, come on. The name's pretty important, okay? If I said my place, it wouldn't get you fired up.
I'm struggling to understand your logic here.
Look, just pay me a visit, alright?
Besides, we could just hit straight there, couldn't we?
Oh. Well, I suppose we could, but Today's the day when my mom, you know. I thought I'd leave her a flower or two.
I see. It's already been that long, huh?
Anyways, just meet me in my laboratory. I'll see you there.
Fast forward to a few years later. We began to immerse ourselves in colored mana purification research. We conducted all sorts of absurd experiments. Sid loved high-risk experiments, a trait he may have inherited from his father. On one occasion, he suffered mana shock and ended up being unable to move his left arm. As I continued to support Sid, we both spent our adolescent years in mana research. Every day, every single day of it. We toiled as if possessed by the gods of mana themselves. After countless failures, we finally succeeded. But finally, we were able to purify colored mana. This isn't self-praise or exaggeration. It truly was the discovery of the century. The news quickly spread throughout the entire outer pole. Then one day we began to look for investors who were willing to commercialize the mana system. Why? Tell me just what was all that hard work for then? What exactly are we going to do if we don't look for investors?
The conversion efficiency with just this filter isn't good enough. If the sediment has low mana concentration, then that means that isn't going to be enough energy. Just how much time do you think it takes to convert enough energy to match a candle that lasts burning for 2-3 hours? At this point, mining coals is still more efficient.
Well, of course, our research is just in its initial stages. So if we continue our line of research, then...
By the way, have you heard of electricity before?
Electricity? Oh, are you talking about that person in the third sector who's trying to control the energy from lightning?
That's right.
But from what I hear, that technology is still in its infancy. And not only that, it's quite dangerous. According to the opinion of the Board of Science, it probably won't see any widespread use anytime soon.
The opinions of those idiots over at the board ain't worth their salt. If mana didn't actually exist, then I sure as heck would be looking into electricity too. Besides, if we're talking danger here, mana's just as guilty. Heck, it might be that mana's way more dangerous than electricity.
What would make you say that?
My left arm's been acting up again lately.
Does it still hurt?
No, not exactly. It feels like it's, I don't know, it's weird, like it's slowly being eaten away by something.
What in the... Has it been that way since you were able to move it?
No, just recently. I didn't say anything at first because it didn't really get in the way of work, but it's been hard to ignore lately.
I wonder what's causing it.
No clue. But one thing's for sure, there's still a whole lot of unknowns we've yet to discover about mana.
As a result of further research, we succeeded in generating a stable, usable amount of mana. In the meantime, we managed to meet willing investors who were interested in our work, despite our youth. We sure got lucky, I commented. But Sid said, "No, we've made this happen," in response. He was the type who hated any fatalistic mindsets. A few years later, everything was going smoothly. Thanks to the investors, Zevit's enterprise was established without a hitch. At the same time of the founding, Sid married the girl from the neighbouring town who had entered the company. Her name was Eline Crossrow. She had unnaturally beautiful emerald eyes and pearly white skin, outspoken and imbued with a strong sense of justice. However, she had been born with a weak constitution, much like Sid's mother. Her, Eline's wish was to benefit other people in the world. She was the type of person who could change the atmosphere just by being there. No matter how rebellious or contrarian someone is, they would immediately become docile and obedient when faced with her. One couldn't help but think of her as a good person, regardless of logic or reason. She was a simple, truly lovable human being. There wasn't anyone who wouldn't be inspired by her zeal. As Zevitz grew in power, so did its profits and efficiency, as it continued to devote itself to the greater good. It didn't reach its peak efficiency, but when winter came, it managed to cut casualties down to less than half. The company continued to gain influence. As we continued to grow in fame and fortune, Rudo was born. Rudo. He was truly a brilliant child. Having inherited both Eline's kindness and his father's wisdom, Rudo was truly a good person. We lived our days in happiness. At the time, we hadn't realized, somewhere unbeknownst to us, we had created a great and powerful enemy. Hey, Sid, Eline, have you heard about Hives?
That's the company of the idiot who tried to control lightning, right? Of course I have.
And none of it is any good.
The filter they're using, that's the one that Sid designed. Shouldn't we do something about them?
Huh? Who cares? Honestly, I don't even know what they're trying to do with those old relics of filters.
But that clearly means he's painting a target on your back.
He must be bitter that you've ruined his plans for electricity.
Ha! That bastard can do whatever the hell he wants to. He failed to make electricity succeed, he's got a grudge against us, and now he's sticking his neck into the mana industry. And to top it all off, he uses the product that his rival designed to start his own company.
He sure has guts, I'll give him that. That kind of audacity sure reminds me of a certain someone.
Huh? Don't be stupid. I wouldn't do anything like that. He's got no vision.
Touché. Would you have a point? What does he hope to accomplish by using those filters? That's a losing strategy when going up against us.
Well, who knows?
Huh?
We're up against someone who's trying to use his enemy's ideas against him and live. You'd be surprised how tough a nut job like that is to take down. Huh? What's wrong, Eline? You're looking pretty pale.
I have a bad feeling about all of this.
How come?
It's just everything has been going so smoothly for all of us. Something's got to happen sooner or later.
And now, you talking about karma? We ain't done a single awful thing to anyone. Why do you think we need to pay back for all the happiness we've been experiencing so far?
I suppose.
A few years later, Rune was born. With almost inexplicable timing, Hives experienced an explosion of growth. Despite being of no competition in terms of both experience with mana and the underlying technologies, they managed to one-up us in terms of business acumen. Their expansion was absolutely unprecedented. No one was able to anticipate that Hives could gain enough power to compete with Zevitz in just a few short years. Mana is likely to become a highly dangerous substance to us residents of the Outer Pole, just as it had been to Sid when his left arm was affected. Make one mistake and you could lose your life. Sid knew that well. Because enough investors for the company were secured, Sid was able to prioritize development of medical treatments when Zevit's enterprise was first established. Eline spearheaded the charge, having Zevitz assemble every skilled doctor around, and founded Zevitz Medica. People had to undergo proper training to handle mana as part of their work in Zevitz. Zevitz dedicated its resources to educating and training its employees. However, it takes time to develop competent mana miners and sediment handlers. Regardless, developing skilled educational personnel and providing a safe work environment were top priority. On the other hand, High-Vez's strategy was to completely ignore all such protocols and exploit the poor economic situation. High-Vez's strategy, Process 1. It's a drug extracted from mana, creating humans who could continue to work without sleep or rest, and who could produce antibodies that could combat mana. Furthermore, the subjects of the drug were promised lifetime employment, immunity to low-level mana shock, and superhuman strength. High-Vez poured its efforts into marketing itself as an entity that could grant these kinds of abilities, serving to excite its subjects all the more. The masses ate up High-Vez's hyperbole-filled slogans. It was a devious strategy that resonated with everyone at the time when employment was at an all-time low.
Hey.
That was just too much.
Yeah.
The after effects on subjects, I can't believe they're that horrible.
Completely losing it because of insomnia. Turning into nothing but skin and bones. Bodies rotting away due to partial mana shock. That abbey was filled with the victims of High-Vez's operations. Some patients even had to be carried off to a church in the neighbouring town.
I know.
And Sid, we have another problem. I brought Eline and the Medica's chief over to the Friars to propose the construction of a general hospital under Zevitz, but
They gave you the stink eye?
yes, or rather, we were assailed with some rather unbecoming speech. It was because of people like us that the god of mana was angered, causing these victims in the first place. That this was divine retribution for being blinded by our greed and desire for convenience.
Damn.
I can't exactly tell whether or not the priest was right. But this isn't the time for that. I believe we need to pursue the Medica project even more now.
What doesn't the government download the immune testing process? That would solve the problem altogether. I'm sure that if the Board of Science would just do something, then the government would.
I doubt that.
Why? People are dying here!
The technology to create Process 1 from mana was developed on the Outer Pole. Only those who've been trained can make it, and of course, you need to use machinery that's only available on the Outer Pole. So here's my take on the whole situation. The government, the Board of Science, and High-Vez are all in cahoots, secretly exporting Process 1.
What?
Why would they do that?
First possible use for it that comes to mind is the same thing that High-Vez does for their workers. Drugs to dope up crafters. Performance enhancement for armies, or maybe they found ways to weaponize the stuff. Well, it's still a pretty new substance. Depending on where the research goes, they could find all sorts of uses for it.
No.
Well, not that I have any proof or anything, it's all just a guess.
Sid, the worse your predictions get, the more likely they are to be true.
Anyway, putting that aside, let's get back on track. Like Aldous said, I don't plan to give up on getting that hospital set up.
But Sid, a vast majority of those patients would rather seek salvation from the church than medical attention from a hospital. I'm sure they tried to get into an overcrowded abbey than a newly built hospital. And if that isn't possible, they just resign themselves to death.
Do people hate us that much? That can't be. We didn't do anything for people to hate us that much, right?
I suppose to the average layman, there isn't much difference between High-Ves and us.
In any case, I don't see any real point in constructing a hospital. The way things are going now.
Damn, what do we do then?
Well, Sid, I have a plan.
Huh?
What you say about the government and Hivez earlier got me thinking. Why don't we just make the church allies with Zevets?
Huh?
Financial backing is a given. We renovate their facilities, get them new equipment, maybe even build a new abbey altogether. Then, we name the hospital after the church, put it under their management. But in exchange, the actual hospital's operations will remain under Zevets Medica. What about that?
What?
As they say, Rex Regnin Gubernat, they will reign, but not govern.
Wait just a minute here. This entire thing's gotten so huge, I don't even know where to begin. Besides, they clearly hate us. What makes you think they'd even want to work with us?
I have a good idea.
An idea?
I heard that quite a number of sisters passed away the other day due to a contagious form of mana shock. There were some who put their life on the line, trying to subdue the patients who had grown violent and unstable. They tried to quell some men who were many times stronger than they were, muscles swollen from their doping effects. With love as their only weapon. Anyway, they did absolutely everything in their power to provide their utmost care for their patients. Sid, we should dedicate our next project on absolute obedience automata to the sisters. And rather than models specifically made for the mana mind, we should focus on creating humanoid models to help support the sisters. That way, we can protect the sisters from any contagious forms of mana shock, or any patients who get too violent.
Eline.
That's quite an ambitious plan. But it might actually work out. I'll pass the proposal to our mechanical engineering partners about this.
There's a sort of poetic justice to all this. For people like us who make a living of science, probably the least theistic thing there is to be saved by religion.
Like, we have to pay attention to the little details like that. We have to focus on caring for the patients and minimizing the victims.
A few days later, we headed to the church.
Father, we are indebted for being allowed an audience today.
But of course, anything for the famous president of Jevit's Enterprise, whom the church so despises. Now, what is it? Mr. Shid Zevitz, what is it that you and your organization need of us?
My wife told me about your circumstances here the other day. I've heard that many of the sisters here had become victims of the subjects they were trying to save.
This is the unfortunate truth. The state of affairs was brought about by the competition between you and Hyves. By playing with mana, you treat the blessings of God like mere toys. Do you understand that that is blasphemy? Do you have anything to say as a fool who chose to ignore their faith and blindly pursue science until its bitter end?
I have no words to offer in my defense. But we at Zevitz have no intention of just giving up. Even if Zevit's Enterprise were to abandon this mana race and let Hyves win, that won't put a stop to the victims. I can confidently say that we are on the side of good here. We conduct our business with the highest moral and ethical standards.
To me, the nature of your business and Hyves's is one and the same.
I'm well aware of that. However, I want you to understand that we will not back down against Hyves. We have our own beliefs to adhere to.
Why do you continue to rebel against God like this? It is God's will that we must simply accept, so we can carry out His divine plan. Is it that difficult to simply accept what has been given to you and live a life within your means? Science is nothing but the height of folly. It is proof that you are ungrateful of the blessings and the life that you have received.
Sure, that might be the case for you. But let me tell you this, Father. As long as we humans have this thing called curiosity, the march of science will never stop. We just had to find out about the hidden possibilities of mana. No, it's not just about mana. You tell a human being to live in this world without trying to satisfy their curiosity. That's just plain impossible. And curiosity is another one of those gifts that your God gave us humans, isn't it?
Blasphemy. Did you want to meet with me face to face, simply to lecture me on God and human nature?
No, we came here because we'd like to pitch something.
Pitch? What could this be now?
We're currently developing machines to assist with work in the mines. They'll be powered by mana, be able to understand what we have to do, and can carry out those commands.
What in the...
However, we've decided to stop work on that. Instead, we've decided to devote our time to creating machines to provide support to the Sisters of the Church.
And why exactly would you do that?
Father, do you want to work with us at Zevitz?
I beg your pardon?
Right now, even if we built a general hospital in town, there would be far more people who would seek help from the church. But Father, that just isn't gonna work out. Sorry to say, but what you're doing isn't gonna save a single life. The only way to save people who are dying from mana is with mana itself. We have completely different values, but I'm sure that we share the same fundamental desire to save as many people as we possibly can. Please, let us work with you. I'm sure patients wouldn't have any problems if you have them go to a hospital that has your blessing.
I see.
And there, we're gonna have our machines take the place of the sisters instead. We've already partnered with an engineering company to make sure that they look perfectly human. They'll have just as much humanity as we do. If you let the machines deal with any dangerous patients, then I'm sure you can prevent any sisters from losing their lives. This Sisters project is our way of showing our sincerity in this proposition. Please, won't you consider?
I see how it is. Truly, a suggestion that could only have been put forth by someone so entrapped in worldly desires such as yourself. A suggestion that completely and utterly ignores the demands of our church.
Well,
No, that's enough. This is no longer something we can discuss. However, you wish to save as many as you can, correct? Your sentiment reeks of arrogance and a lack of concern for the souls of the deceased. But very well. I can understand your reasoning.
we're very grateful for...
However, we cannot accept those machines of yours.
What? Why not? Don't you want to prevent any more of the Abbey sisters from becoming victims?
Of course I want to put a stop to the victims, and I wish to save as many people as we can. However, these patients have all come here seeking salvation from God. Although I suppose you atheist heathens won't understand. No matter how well they can mimic human behavior, like how a hymn sung without a heart won't heal. Prayer from something without a soul will not save anyone.
Was Sid just silent?
Just silenced by a member of the clergy?
Still, for such non-believers to save lives in the name of the church, your convictions have come through. I will need some time.
Oh my.
The mind sync was cut?
Action just.
Oh no.
Sorry, I'll get it patched up now.
Milady. More importantly, how was your condition?
Well,
Well? Oh, I mean, how do you feel?
yeah.
No. What I mean is,
Ah! That's such a pain! This is the first first time I've had so much difficulty connecting a dive right!
Is this case that much different than usual?
There has to be just the right amount of pressure from external mana so that the internal mana can stabilize. Being able to refine mana consistently is quite a difficult feat.
Even though we look to be the same people, it's amazing how differently our bodies can function. It's like we're completely different species.
I beg to disagree.
Hmm?
It all boils down to the presence or absence of mana. If we were to stay here too long, then our mana systems would end up deteriorating, and we would end up in the same physicality as you. Albus, you and we are all just the same human beings.
I see.
If I may, about that memory just now, you referred to a church. Does that mean there are also mana-related religions in the Outer Pole?
There certainly are. In fact, that's why a company like ours was able to grow so much, despite being anything but religious. It's thanks to Eline's idea that we partnered with the church. Even in the Outer Pole, there are plenty of people who seek help from the god of mana.
I never knew. The owner of a pawn shop said that the god of mana had forsaken this land, which is what led to the development of science.
That's pretty accurate. Even though our principles and religion contradict each other, they can still coexist with each other. When it all boils down to it, us humans need something to believe in. Even if it's a god who's abandoned us.
I had thought this was a land with nothing but self-serving individuals, but that wasn't the case.
Sid and Eline have such strong sense of duty and concern. Those two are truly amazing. There's so much I could learn from such wonderful people.
Agreed. I was fixated on working on simply conducting research, but those two, they were always wholeheartedly directing their efforts into making the Outer Pole a better place. I was often reminded of the difference in our personalities when they were still around.
What do you mean? I had heard that Sid had already moved on to the next world, but has his wife, Eline, also passed on as well?
Yes. Several weeks after Rune died, she had also passed away. You see, Eline was killed by Rune. She laced the tea Eline had always drank with Process 1 before it was refined into a drug.
She was killed by her own flesh and blood daughter.
Rune, who often frequented Zevit's labs, had actually snuck in and stole Process 1 that was kept for research purposes. She had taken enough to kill 10 adults. Directors and executives of companies from other Outer Poles regions, who were all supposed to merge with Zevit's, were later found dead. Poisoned. Rune then committed suicide after. Thanks to that one incident, our dream, Sid's, Eline's, and mine, our dream to expand Zevit's throughout the Outer Pole was completely scrapped.
I was at a sincere loss for words. Just what could possibly have driven Rune to do all that? Just 10 years of age, We heard that she was a problem child of sorts. No, this is far beyond that.
Devil spawn.
She certainly does live up to that nickname. What was her motive? There must have been something that pushed her to do that, right?
We couldn't find anything like that. Rune had an abnormality in the brain, you see. A portion of her brain wasn't working. Even if she was able to understand emotions like happiness, sadness, and anger, she couldn't feel them herself. She didn't feel fear or guilt, nor was she able to develop a sense of compassion.
But could someone have developed such destructive tendencies simply because of a lack of emotion?
I don't know. Maybe Rune was special, but at this point, there's no way for us to find out.
I need to interrupt. But I finished the connection.
Are you alright, Selphine? You're looking a little pale there. Do we continue from earlier? Alright. Here on, it'll be about the Zevitz siblings. Now I have to warn you, it's going to be rather disturbing. Are you sure you want to keep going?
We are.
A few years had passed since Sid spoke with the priest. The number of Hivez's victims continued to multiply drastically. Then one day, someone from within the church came across evidence exposing the collusion between the government, Hivez, and the Board of Science. That was the clincher. A fissure formed in the long-standing relationship of the church and government, leading to an agreement between Zevitz and the church. The energy industry versus the government versus the church. The level of discord among the three parties was truly unprecedented. In the midst of all that, Rudo was immersed in his studies daily, both in the academy and at home, in preparation for becoming Zevitz Enterprises' next president. Just like his father, he also had a strong interest in mana and didn't have any difficulty studying. Rudo simply loved to learn. I remember him often telling Eline that he was bored by the lessons at the academy. However, Rudo, intelligent as he is, had one big concern. His little sister, Rune. At the time, Rune had behavioural issues. She had always had a frown on her face, and the only time she ever smiled was when people got hurt. Everything she did had some trace of malintent to it. Whatever her actions were, they were always to cause people problems. One day, Rune finally did something that put the final nail on the coffin. Rune stabbed the Crowley's family's son's eye with a stick, causing him to lose it. The whole incident with the Crowleys. What a mess.
No kidding.
I wonder, what caused Rune to do that? Was she not satisfied with something?
I don't know. Eline, she's just heartbroken. On the outside, she puts a smile on and says she's fine. But she's starving herself, and her body's just...
That's terrible. And I feel sorry for poor Rudo as well. I hope he isn't getting shamed or mistreated in school.
This might be a good opportunity for him.
Huh?
Maybe it's about time Age-wise, too, sounds about right.
He's lost in his own thoughts, huh? After the Crowley's incident, Rudo had to stop attending school. The reason was never said out loud, but it was obvious. Rudo was just around 10 years old when he began to work as a trainee in Zevitz. He studied daily in Lab 9, said to be the very best in the industry for producing top researchers, and started becoming more and more introverted. Now that I think about it, it must have been tough for him. As a child, Rudo was somewhat lacking in imagination. To be blunt, he wasn't fit to be a researcher. Both I and the other members of the lab thought so. Rudo truly had a talent for learning. However, he had difficulties coming up with anything new that was outside of what was taught to him. They were expecting him to have an eccentric imagination, just as Sid did when he was young, but unfortunately it was all for naught. On the other hand, he was very careful not to offend people with his words or actions, and was very considerate of others. As time passed, everyone around him slowly came to see him as someone who couldn't succeed Sid. A few years after Rudo began working in Lab 9, Rune's house arrest, the consequence of the Crowley's incident, was lifted. Rune was often brought by her home tutor to visit the lab. As time passed, it became clear. Though Rudo was said to be a prodigy in his aptitude for learning, Rune greatly exceeded his capabilities. Just a few months after Rune started to take trips into Lab 9, she was able to answer the unsolvable battery problems that had been plaguing the sisters' machines for years. Everyone was speechless. It was then that I saw a glimpse of Sid's inventiveness and creativity. No, she trivially solved a problem that Sid himself couldn't. Probably everyone in the lab thought that she would surpass Sid as a researcher someday. Rudo began to slowly lose confidence in himself. Even after things calmed down from the Crowley's incident and he began to get along with Rune, Rudo was lost and didn't know what to do. It was written all over his face. Eventually, Rudo only did administrative work in the lab. It seemed to have dawned on him that he couldn't compete with Rune. And even then, Rune joined in the administrative work just as an assistant and took his job away from him. Sometimes it looked as if Rune was deliberately driving Rudo up the wall psychologically. There was a slight air of hostility to it. No, hostility isn't the right word. There didn't seem to be any motive to it. From an outsider's perspective, it was just a little sister helping out her older brother, nothing more. Whether it was intentional or not, a normal person wouldn't have noticed. One day, Sid and Eline came to me for advice.
Look, I'm not against sending her off to school, but I just don't see the point.
I've heard you already, Sid. I want to hear what Abbas has to say about the matter. Hey Abbas, what do you think? Could I have your honest opinion?
Should Rune go to school, or... I don't see any problem with that. 6 whole years have passed since the incident with the Crowley's boy.
That's not the point. She's been studying at Lab 9 all this time. What do you expect her to pick up at school? I think it's a waste of time.
I'm not referring to her studies. We need to reintroduce her to society. She doesn't even have anyone her age that she can call a friend. We need to at least try to get her to live a normal life.
And just who exactly determines what's normal and what isn't?
I agree with Abbas. Rather than holding her up in the dimly lit laboratory and have rather she live and behave more like the young lady that she is.
Pretty surprising to hear that from you, Eline, considering how insistent you were about her education.
Well, of course, she still has to maintain her studies. However, I think we're pushing Rune far too hard in that direction. She may look perfectly comfortable with how she is now, but I think she needs time to interact with other children her age as well.
You really don't share that opinion, Sid?
If you're asking me for my personal opinion, I don't think people's skills are all they're cracked up to be. If she keeps at that work, then she's gonna end up picking them up, whether she likes it or not.
I swear, why is this man just so...
Sid, you really should think about your abilities a little more. Your standards are well and far removed from what is considered as normal.
Well, all that aside, my final decision is to let Rune choose what she wants to do. I don't plan to rob her of her ability to choose. She's got the right to.
I knew it.
Do you agree with him then, Albus?
I do. Considering Rune's age, it really should be the both of you making the final decision. But I certainly agree with respecting her opinion as well. Well, I'll go have Rune undergo a physical examination. I'll let the hospital know too.
Thank you, Albus, really.
I hope Rune appreciates the sentiment. It was a few weeks after that. Just before Rune was to be enrolled in an academy, she had a physical exam done in the lab. Using the MRI device that Sid developed, I examined Rune's brain. What the... Is the machine malfunctioning?
No, that's impossible. We just conducted maintenance on it yesterday. It's calibrated just right, too. Can't be a problem with the machine.
Albus, these are Rune scans, right?
Is this even possible? This means that she can't feel any emotion.
That's absurd. A human like this couldn't exist.
Don't tell anyone about this, Nidche, Vorthal. Eline's in an especially sensitive time right now. When the timing is right, I'll make sure to tell Sid. The portion of Rune's brain which controlled human emotions was non-functional. What exactly this meant, none of the members of the lab nor I knew at the time. While concealing Rune's name, we asked other staff in the Medica, but not a single person even knew of the condition. But it was obvious that something was wrong. MRI itself was still a new, young technology. However, the very first person to respond to this was Rudo. Rudo clearly knew something that we didn't. It was a few months after Rune was admitted into the academy when he revealed it to us. What's this book? Lie spotting? It's a book about the psychological nature of lies and how to detect them.
Oh, Albus.
Oh, good evening, Rudo.
I had to talk with you.
What's the matter? Rudo's story came out of nowhere. Rune is killing small animals at a park nearby. Honestly, it sounded so absurd that I couldn't believe what he had told us. Ever since the Crowley's incident, Rune had grown up to be a good girl. deep in my heart, I harbored a small doubt. What if Rune was using that brain scan as a pretense so he could get revenge on Rune? He had more than enough reason and motive to do so. Against the gentle Rune must have felt desperate, given their positions.
I don't expect you to believe it, though.
How do I even react? Have you told Sid and Eline?
No, well, not directly. I kind of played it off, saying that Rune might be up to something bad again. If I didn't, I'm sure Mom would get hurt again.
I see.
Yes. The only other person I could talk to about this is you, Albus.
Sorry, Rudo, but I think the only thing you can do for now is keep an eye on the situation. If I can do anything to help, I'd be more than happy to. But right now, even if everything what you've told me is true, it's still not enough justification to take action right now. If I brought up the topic saying that I heard everything from you, if they decide to ignore it, then that'll be the end of it.
You're right.
By the way, what is this book for? Is this for taking measures against Rune?
Yes.
Rudo, do you think Rune is a chronic liar?
Not sure. Rune displays far too many tendencies that are described in that book.
Such as?
For example, people who lie habitually are very conspicuous by nature. They hate staying in a single place. Once they get bored of things, they head elsewhere.
Now that you mention it, she did say that she wanted to see the outside world.
It's not just that. They're always smiling, but it's only their mouth that's in a smile. Their eyes remain expressionless. Whenever you talk with them, they end up looking at you straight in the eye too much. There are a lot of people in and around town who haven't accepted Rune. I asked them why exactly. They told me they couldn't on a biological level. I think it's an instinctive repulsion to her behavior. It doesn't matter whether the person in question is an adult or a child. They have something that feels foreign to us, then they become the target of fear and alienation. I think Rune knows that she's causing people to feel disgusted at her, is intentionally behaving that way. More than that,
Rudo?
I'm sure Rune is planning something.